Hey guys, it's Choco the Chocobo here, and in this episode we're going to be talking about the secret shop, and just to kind of remind you guys, that's located over here for the Radiant, and over here for the Dire. The secret shop is the last item, or last shop, where you can buy your component items, right? So like the basic standalone items, they do functions by themselves, you don't need to build them with other items. They work, and that's relative to having your base shop's basic items, right? Like all this stuff that work by itself. So let's get right into it. The secret shop, generally speaking, with the exception of the Orb of Venom and the boosters here, these are all souped up versions of what you can buy at the basic shop. Um, so keep that in mind as we're going along. These items are not just something you usually get very early on, except the Orb of Venom and maybe the regen ones, because they're very expensive, right? So you can see here like the prices are about 3K and stuff like that. Orb of Venom's only 275. So bear in mind that their prices are pretty steep, especially relative to what you can get at the early game. The only item you could even conceivably get at the very start of the game is the Orb of Venom. If you really, really want to get a Ring of Health early, you could. Some players do that, I'm personally not a big fan of that, but follow your heart. So let's get right into it. The Orb of Venom. The Orb of Venom is a attack modifier item, so if you think back all the way to the Morbid Mask kind of explanation, the attack modifier is something that kind of all your auto attacks. So whenever you just like right click and you just start punching them to death, or shooting them to death, or whatever you do with that particular hero, you have a poison added to your attacks, and what it does is it slows things down. But the catch here is that the actual slow is dependent upon whether or not you're a melee or a ranged hero. If you're melee, it's a pretty decent slow. It's 12% slow for 275 gold. It's actually a pretty good item. If you're ranged, however, it's only a 4% slow, and that becomes debatable about whether or not it's an actually good idea to have it. But the duration is actually not that bad. The poison damage is absolute rubbish, but the actual duration of this item is not bad at all for an early melee kind of attack. So something to keep in mind. For 275, it's easily transitioned out of if you don't want to keep it, and if you do want to keep it to build the Iascati, which I'll talk about in a later video, it definitely does work, right? So something to keep in mind. The Ring of Health and the Void Stone here, they're both regen items. They're souped up versions of the Ring of Regen and the Sobi Mask. So the Ring of Regen gave you 2 HP regen per second. The the Sobi Mask gave you 50%. These guys give you 5 and 100% respectively. So very, very important, and especially because they build into really good components, right? So as you can see here, they build into 3 different things each. Very handy in terms of being able to give you a lot more sustain for an item slot. So cost effective wise, not great, but in terms of what they can save in terms of item space and what you may be building into, something to keep in mind. The boosters, energy, vitality, and point. What these do is we've had things that modified your stats, right? So we had things that modified your strength, agility, intelligence. We've had stuff that modified your attack damage, armor, even your movement speed and your magic resist. But we haven't had anything really that dealt with just boosting your HP, just boosting your mana, and that's what these boosters do for you. The boosters offer you 250 apiece, 250 apiece for energy and vitality, so for HP and mana, and the point gives you 200 HP and 150 mana. And you may be thinking to yourself like, wow, why doesn't everyone just get like a ton of point boosters? I mean, you could. Again, mostly people buy these items with the intent of building them into something else. But I mean, you could get this to kind of raise your overall level of how much HP and mana you have. Sometimes you may even think like you just want a little bit more health, and that offers you enough for an earlier part of the game. But generally speaking, it's not worth it. You want to build, like, you generally buy these again with the intention of building, and even if you're not, and you're just kind of looking at this and being like, why not just get these? You get stats in its place, and it's a lot more effective because not only do you get the HP, but you get the HP regen, all as minor as it may be, and you also get possibly what helps your primary stat, right? So if you're a strength hero and you get an ogre axe, for example, it's 1,000 gold, and it gives you 10 extra strength, and each point in strength gives you 19 extra HP, 190 HP. It's not bad at all relative to that, and you also get some HP regen, you got some other stuff, and you can build it into things, and it will help your damage bases. Like, I'm Alchemist right here, so that would help me do more damage per hit. So, something to keep in mind. Again, it builds into pretty great stuff, so bear that in mind. And here I'm just going to scroll through these. You can see that the vitality builds into quite a few things because it's a pretty nice defensive item. So yeah, that's that. Alright, so we've entered the souped up versions of like crazy prices and junk like that. The Hyperstone has a huge jump in price point. You know, the point booster is 1200, this is 2100. These items, my middle tower is under attack. The Hyperstone is a very expensive item, but it's the soup up version of Gloves of Haste. 15 attack speed from that. This gives you 55. So it's a huge jump, and it's really, really great for you, and it builds into two things that give you quite a bit of attack speed. So something that can definitely help you out if you have a low attack speed, or if you're a hero that has something that, like, you know, on attack you have a chance of doing this kind of thing, so you can maximize how many times you hit them. Very common to see that being used on heroes that, you know, have slow attack speeds and have that requirement. Demon Edge and Sacred Relic are both items that boost your damage output directly, kind of like similar to how we had the armaments, broadsword, blades of attack, stuff like that. These things modify your damage straight up, and it's a bit of damage, right? Like 46 damage, 60 damage, but they're incredibly expensive. Now, Demon Edge is used for building into stuff that's like the core damage, like big damage items that you think about. Sacred Relic is more of like situational or like reactionary kind of items, so something to think about. We'll talk more about this in recipe stuff, but just that's what they are there for. Standalone, they do fine. I wouldn't go too crazy buying them, and definitely don't buy them individually together. Don't be like, I got a Demon Edge, I can afford a Sacred Relic, because that will give you a Divine Rapier, and we do not want that yet. We'll talk about that later, but don't do it. So now we have the Mystic Staff, the Reaver, and the Eagle Song. Now they all cost different prices, but they all give you 25 of that particular stat. And there's a whole bunch of background about this actually, but basically the idea here is that these are the stronger versions of the attributes items, right? So if you remember way the heck back, we talked about, you know, these guys over here. It goes from 10 to 25, and that's a huge jump, right? There's nothing that gives you like 25 to each, but these things here will boost your individual like attributes by a ton, and it's a huge difference in terms of what you can make, and they're all something that builds into a corresponding attribute like recipe. So the Mystic Staff builds into 2 very nice intelligence items, the Reaver builds into 2 very nice strength items, and the Eagle Song builds into 2 really nice agility items. So something to think about, something to definitely keep an eye on. But yeah, so that's it for this episode, guys. Please let me know what you thought about the episode below in the comments. And if you need me, if you're like, this was really poorly done for some reason, you sound strange, Choco, it's because I just woke up. But I figured I'd make this video for you guys. But yeah, I'd be definitely happy to, you know, remake it if you guys want that to go down. And other than that, I hope you guys have a great and wonderful day. Have a good one.